Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's session, The Future of Storytelling. My name is Tracy McKenzie, and I'm the Continuous Improvement Lead for People and Culture at AMP, and I'm your host for today's session. A special welcome to visitors to AMP, members of the media who may be here, our sponsors, and those joining us via our live feed. A special welcome, in fact, to all of the AMP staff members that are here, members of the AMP board and the leadership team as well. I encourage you all today to participate in the conversation through social media, using the hashtag AmplifyFest. If you haven't already, please download the Amplify app, where you can post questions, take notes or share your thoughts. Much like AMP is innovating to revolutionise its services to customers, our next speaker is revolutionising the future of our reading experience. Let me share a few things about him. Paul is the recipient of multiple innovation awards and is CEO and co-founder of BookTrack. Paul trained as an aeronautical engineer at the University of Sydney. The University of New South Wales, and then flew... My faux pas, apologies. And then flew for over a decade as an officer with the Royal New Zealand Air Force. Paul actually completed operational flying in roles including surveillance, search and rescue, and some counter-terrorism missions from Antarctica to the Gulf War. His passion for innovation has seen him founding a new division of a high-tech electronics and software company that provides products and services to the global defence industry, which grew into one of the top 20 fastest growing companies in New Zealand. And that was when he co-founded BookTrack after that. BookTrack has investors, including Weta Digital, and they bought us Lord of the Rings films, and Peter Thiel, the co-founder and CEO of PayPal. And BookTrack is a game-changing technology. The future of reading never sounded so good. He's a fascinating guy. Please give a warm welcome to Paul Cameron.
Thanks, Tracy. Very good, thank you. All right. Welcome everyone. Thanks a lot for coming to listen to me speak today. I'm going to tell my story about storytelling. So isn't it fascinating? Can you guys see that? Cool. Isn't it fascinating that once upon a time only the wealthy owned libraries, and information was closely guarded, and it wasn't something that was available to the masses like it is today. Today we can carry an entire library around on our mobile phone. We don't, but we could. And this is how we read today. It looks more like this. We read on the go. We read on multiple devices. And we're often not reading, we're doing other things on there, like watching videos and the likes. And this is really, all around the world now, we have drastically different entertainment expectations. If you think about reading, on the other hand, the way we read really hasn't evolved for about 2,000 years. Distribution of books has changed enormously. But the way we read, we're still swiping to turn the page, even on our digital books. Everything else you scroll up and down on, but we still swipe. We're still holding on to a behaviour which is about 2,000 years old. So when you compare that to everything else going on, like, entertainment today, you're streaming video, you're streaming music, it's video games, it's social, it's mobile. We even, our TVs are even plugged into the internet now. So reading really is struggling to keep up because it hasn't really evolved in any meaningful sort of way, and that's led to problems all around the world. And here's some of the stats. So just in the USA, 33% of high school graduates and 42% of college graduates never read another book during their lifetime after graduation. I spend a lot of my time in the US, and that is not surprised by that stat at all. New Zealand's not immune to this either, and this is very similar sort of stats coming out of Australia. 12 to 24-year-olds spend on average 10 minutes per day reading, but 140 minutes per day watching television. And it's no wonder, because of the way that television and movies and video games have evolved that you are really getting this sort of behaviour that's going out there. And we think that's a problem, and I call that the elephant in the room. We like this elephant because he's watching TV with his mate the dog, not reading a book. So that's the problem that we're trying to solve. And when you look at what people have done to try and fix this problem, when books went digital, everybody thought there was this massive opportunity. At last, we could bring those video experiences or game experiences into reading, and a whole area called enhanced books popped up. And the bottom line is it's failed, and publishers are now moving away from it. Now, enhanced books work really well when you're learning to do something like learn how to swing a golf club, because you can actually watch a video of someone swinging a golf club. But when you read a book, the most powerful thing about reading is getting lost in a story. You know, the words melt away on the page, and you forget you're actually turning, and you're in this imaginary world, which is very, very powerful. So the big difference between, and then what happens is then all of a sudden you put a video in the middle of that experience. You've got to pull yourself out of that deeper level imagination state of the mind, and then you've got to watch this video, and then you've got to get back into it again. So it's really distracting. It's taking you in and out of this experience. And that's what publishers have found. They're putting these books out there. When people are reading fiction, they don't want that distraction. They just want a continuous and immersive reading experience. So the challenge we really set ourselves is this, is how does reading engage a new audience in this modern multimedia and sensory world that we live in today. So here's our story. So this is my brother Mark. So back in 2007, we started having this crazy idea. So our backgrounds, Mark's a physiotherapist, lives in Hong Kong. You know my background, so I flew with the Air Force. By the way, this is the plane I used to fly on. This is us landing in Antarctica, which is pretty cool. And back in 2007, we noticed something that was going on, and it was this. So you've got to remember, let's go back to 2007. There was no smartphones. There's no Kindle. In fact, Kindle came out at the end of 2007. There's no eBooks. But this is what people used to do, and they still do this today all around the world. They get out their books, paper or electronic, they plug in their headphones, and they listen to whatever's on their playlists, or back then it was Discmans, I think. and they listen to whatever random sort of music or radio is going on, and they're using it to block out the outside world. And we just thought it was a strange behaviour. You know, if somebody came from outer space and looked at that behaviour, they'd go, why are you listening to something that has nothing to do with what you're reading? It just doesn't make sense. You've got basically two senses fighting each other around one entertainment experience, so it just doesn't really work. And then we thought we'd give a few things a try. So what we did was we started synchronising manually. We'd play a happy song, and then we'd read a happy part of the book, or a sad song and a sad part of the book. And we went, you know what, that's actually a much better experience. As we started to dig in further, we researched it, and we found out that other people had tried to do this. They'd put CDs in the back of the book, and when you reach this page, push play on track one. But again, it's a bit clunky. But no one had really taken the next step and gone, what about, instead of just playing your favourite music, what about if it was like going to the movies, a movie-style soundtrack that wasn't just made up of music, but ambient sound and sound effects. Now, the problem with that, of course, was we all read at different reading speeds. And in fact, we don't only read at different reading speeds, we actually change our speed as we read, depending on environment, the text, how difficult it is to read, or whatever else is going on, distractions. So we had a lot of challenges in front of us. And overlay on top of that, just the devices that were available. There was no memory, there was no app stores, there was no smartphones. So we had a few challenges, but we persevered. So this here was actually our first prototype. We patented this technology, which had a clip on a book which went to a Windows mobile phone, and it worked pretty well. But we tried it on a bunch of people, and they just said, I don't even have that phone. I don't even know how to load software on a phone. Remember, it was actually hard to load software once upon a time. And so what we did was we ended up parking it. But we did notice a few things along the way, and one of them was that reading is the only mainstream entertainment medium without synchronized sound. If you take the music away from a film or a video game, all the emotion dies with it, right? So why hasn't reading taken up this sort of opportunity? And the main reason is because the devices have not been available until now to make it possible. So we basically parked the idea back in 2007. Remember, the Kindle came out in 2007, and then 2010 the iPad came out. So we said, well, great, here's finally a device that's going to enable this to exist. And so what I'd like to do now is just play you a very short video that explains what BookTrack is.
By blending inspired sound design with great stories, BookTrack creates a totally high-def, immersive reading experience. Ambient audio, sound effects, and music are carefully synchronized, celebrating the imagery of the author's text and drawing you deeper into the story. BookTrack's breakthrough technology can sense your reading speed and automatically adjusts pacing of the audio tracks to match. BookTrack, hear the future of reading.
Okay, so that's BookTrack, but I thought I love live demos, so we're going to do a live demo. So what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to try and, here we go. Ooh. Here we go. So this here is live, coming off booktrack.com. And what we're going to do is we're going to pick a book. By the way, I've also planted 2 people in the audience that are trying BookTrack throughout this. And so we're going to come back and ask them for feedback at the end of the session. So this is anyone, you can go to booktrack.com on your devices. Doesn't matter whether it's mobile, tablet, internet. And I'm just going to select the book here. So this here is a H.P. Lovecraft story. It's a pretty scary story, so stand by. And what we're going to do is we're going to read it. Now, so now that's loaded and ready to go. So before I get into it, I'll just explain how the technology works. So as you read, we learn your reading speed. We know that because every time you turn the page, we know how many words are on the page. It doesn't matter if you change the font sizes, we can calculate that. The software is clever like that. And when we turn the page, we know where you are. We know you're at the top of the page. So, and if you get distracted at any time, you can just tap on a word and it will then synchronize back to that word and continue on. And we use a variety of all of those sort of tips and tricks, feed them into a bunch of algorithms, and then the soundtrack automatically adapts to match what you're reading when you're reading it. So let's have a look at it. So this here is, like I said, it's a scary novel, so we'll kick it off and we'll see what happens. A bit more volume. There we go. So you can see straight away there's this little indicator which you can turn on or off, but that's estimating what you're reading at. And if I click on a word here, see it'll jump ahead in the story. If I click ahead down here. Now it's just a normal e-reader, so you can change your font sizes for those that are hard of seeing. And if you want over here, these are these indicators. You can have underlines, dots. Most people actually just turn it off and they just read like they would a normal book, get immersed in this track. And the more you read, the more accurate it gets, and the more you lose yourself in the story. So that is BookTrack, and there's a few things that are significant about it. Anyone, any questions? Quick questions now on that? I don't think we're allowed questions now. We'll do them at the end. Okay, cool. So what I want to do is just jump back into this here. Where are we? Give me a second. Here we go. So, so one of the unique things around what we're doing, remember I talked earlier about there's a whole bunch of people who have tried to do these sort of things, but what they've done is they added distractive elements. Well, one of the unique things around BookTrack is it is still the only enhancement to reading that's delivered while you read. So it's all about the reading experience. It's not about dragging you out of that to another experience over here. And it's interesting, when we first started talking to publishers about this, and we work with the biggest publishers in the world, they were very skeptical because they're used to these distractive elements coming in and the audience not reacting very well to it. Once they understood it was all about the reading experience and augmenting the author's work, both authors and publishers really came on board in a big way, and I'll talk about that soon. When we launched this here, it went straight to the top of the app stores. It's been a top 10 app in 20 countries. 2 days after we launched, the Apple team called us. They said, everyone in the office is using your app. Do you want to be a key account? So we now, every quarter, meet out at Cupertino and work through with them on what we're doing. We've won a number of innovation awards, and we've had a huge amount of press around BookTrack all around the world. But not everything has gone to plan. So I love this quote, you know, everyone has a plan until they're punched in the face. And I think the nature about what we do is that it's a new thing, right? We're really changing a millennia-old habit, and that is the way people read. And so we've had a huge amount of positive press. Probably, you know, we track it about 95% of the press that covers us is positive. You know, things like the Wall Street Journal, Mr. Rushdie said he was impressed. We actually did a Salman Rushdie story and released that. You know, the future of reading and advance in electronic publishing. But it wasn't all positive. There's definitely, I'm sure there's people in the audience going, oh my God, when I read in silence. There's no way I'd do that, right? But the difference is you haven't read with a soundtrack that's matched to the content of your story, okay? So, and it's interesting. So the best thing I'd say is give it a try and then pass judgment. But, you know, here's an example. So not all of the press was positive, you know. And if anyone's familiar with TechCrunch, it's kind of the mecca of tech reporting in Silicon Valley. And they've written about us 5 times, and one of them they gave us a really hard time. You know, they called BookTrack just a horrible idea. It really hurt. But while the first quote up on the screen here is about BookTrack, the next two are actually taken from 1928 when sound was added to film. So, and this is about the talkies. And Time magazine called the effect startling but often annoying. Literary Digest, it makes a double assault on the nerves. And Mr. Warner from Warner Brothers was famously quoted in 1927 to saying, who the hell wants to hear actors talk, you know? And interesting, back in 1927, do you know they used to have orchestras that played at orchestra pits at the front of silent movie theatres? They spent $1 million in 1927, $1 million in 1927 on lobbying the public about the robots that are going to come and rock your kids to bed at night now that you're getting rid of canned music. And, so there's this massive sort of push to try and protect what was coming, and they couldn't kind of get past it. And I see a lot of things going on, some modern day examples. I mean, one of them that's just still, surprises me. I've met a bunch of people over the last few days, and you go up and you say, hi, how you going? And then you swap cards, and then that night I go back, and then I'm going to send you a link, and you're going to say yes, and then I get to see all of your business contacts. That's just crazy. Who would do that? You're just giving up all your business contacts to me. But people do it all the time. It's called LinkedIn. It's a massive company. I mean, just the idea of it is just ridiculous. But we do it every day with lots of people, right? I mean, or there's communicating in 120 characters. Geez, people still think that's crazy, but, it's doing pretty well. Or, for the accountants in the audience, what about, let's take all of our accounting data and put it in the cloud, not in our nice secure servers, So there's all these sort of things which at the time seemed a bit crazy, but now we're just kind of getting used to it, and it becomes the norm. And I love this quote, which is, a mind that is stretched by new experience can never go back to its old dimensions. And for us, we had a moment like this. We were about 2 years into our company. We had about 45 titles. They were selling pretty well. We were doing okay. We'd been knocked around a little bit by the media here and there, but on the whole, it was very positive. And I had a meeting with a guy named Mark Darcy. And Mark is the creative director at Facebook, right? He's very, very senior there. And I'd kind of been stalking him in New York for about a year. And eventually he agreed to have lunch with me. And we sat down, he goes, Paul, he goes, I know you're doing this soundtracks while you read thing, and I like you, and I wish you all the best, but it's just not for me. When I read in silence, and I'm fine with that. And I said, hey, that's cool, Mark, but do you just mind doing me a favour? And I said, how about you just try it once? So I was sliding the iPad across the table. And I said, look, just put the headphones on and just read for a couple of minutes, and if you don't want to talk about it anymore, that's fine, we'll have lunch and we won't mention it. So, Mark read for about 20 minutes, and this is exactly what he said after he finished. His exact quote was, he took the headphones off and he said, I didn't see the future of reading, I just heard it. And he said he'd never been blindsided by a product so much. He's an ex-ad guy, so he said he's supposed to be able to pick consumer behaviour. And he said he said what we've got here is one of the most powerful products because you're going to flip people's thinking. And he said they'll take that to dinner parties and they'll shout it from the rooftops for you. And that's what we're finding. If any day, just go search for BookTrack online and you'll find teachers and students and adults and kids talking about discovering this and what an experience it is. So that kind of gave us a bunch of impetus to go, because we had this problem. We were stuck at 45 titles and we were painstakingly creating these titles as we went. So we said, how are we going to get from 45 titles to 45,000 titles? So what we did is we launched something called BookTrack Studio about a year ago. And that allowed anybody to add a soundtrack to their story and publish it. And I've got a short video on that now.
There's something special about getting lost in a story. eBooks, blogs, self-publishing, writers have more ways than ever to express their imagination. And readers have never had so many options at their fingertips. BookTrack synchronizes music, effects, and ambient sound to text, helping your inner imagination come alive. BookTrack is a more immersive reading experience. You can escape into a story at your own pace. Bring a new dimension to the written word by adding layers of sound and music to the stories you write, creating the perfect soundtrack for your words. Share your creations with the world and take the experience of reading to new emotional heights. BookTrack. Soundtracks for books.
So we launched that, it's actually about 14, 15 months ago now, and we've now got 12,000 book tracks created in 30 different languages, and there's over 2 million readers on the platform. So what I wanted to do now was show you, we're going to create our own book track here, okay? So we're going to have a bit of fun. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go again back to BookTrack here, and in this instance, again, this is all online, so live demo, we'll see how we go. So I'm going to go to my work, and I'm going to create a new book track. Now, you've got two options. We've got a massive library of books you can choose from if you're not much of a writer, but in this case, I've composed something very special for the occasion. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give this a title, so we're going to call it Amplify. Is that spelled right? Yeah, good. And in here, I'm going to say this is chapter 1, and we're going to call it AMP, okay? And then in here, you can just physically write your text in here, but that's not good enough because I've already pre-prepared something. So I'm going to cut and paste a little story in here that I wrote. Now you can go on, you can add more chapters, you can import your book, all of those sort of normal things. Now there's 3 steps to this process. You add your text, you add your sound, and then you publish. So we're going to go and add some sound now. So we're very quickly going to create a soundtrack for this. So what I do here is so this is a scene, it's a sunny but chilly day in Sydney. So I'm going to highlight the first couple of paragraphs here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in, so first of all there's a big plus button. If you happen to be a musician, you can bring in your own audio. But we know a lot of people aren't, so we've got a massive audio library, over 20,000 audio files you can choose from. And so in here, first of all, we're going to lay an ambient track in the background. So remember I said it's a chilly morning in my story, so I'm going to go, let's look for wind, and I'm actually going to search for some wind, some chilly wind noises, and let's see what we come. So we can preview these tracks. Well, that sounds good. Okay, we'll go with that. All right. And then what we're going to do now is there's a scene. All of a sudden, Annalie burst into the room and shouted, "There's been a disaster." Okay, so this sounds pretty bad. So I'm gonna highlight from there all the way to the end, and we're going to have some music that kind of matches the mood of that. So we're going to stick the music box. And so what emotion? Well, she's shocked and confused. And the genre of it's an adventure story, and the style of music is orchestral classical, because that's I kind of like that epic sort of piece. So let's see what we've got here. So have a listen. Sounds pretty good. How about this one? Not so much. Or maybe a bit too much. Okay, so kind of like that first one. So let's go with that. All right, we'll bring that one in there. And then finally what we're going to do here is then as quick as a flash, Annalie pulled out a rocket launcher out of her bag, opened the window, took aim and fired. Okay, so we're going to highlight that bit there, and I'm going to go for a sound effect on this here. And let's look. These are different categories. I've got young girls, they love the magic spells. But we'll go weapons, war, military, and I'm going to go launcher, and let's see what we get. Let's have a listen. Oh, a bit too much. Oh, there's heaps. Oh, hey, this looks good. Perfect. Okay. And then, of course, we need a finale. I'm going to highlight, and the helicopter exploded in a cloud of smoke and ash. Okay, cool. So let's go to sound effects again to finish this off, and we're going to go explosion. Actually, let's just see what we've got here. There'll be a whole bunch. We're back into more of that. Explosions. I'm saying a bit bigger. Here we go. This looks good. Oh, this looks good. Yes. Okay. So let's do that. Okay, so now we've got this in here. We can actually mix this. So as it plays back, I'm going to play this back, and you can see I can control things like I don't want this to come in straight away. I don't want it to fade in. I control the volume of it. I can bring it in and out. I can also do things like I can select between the tracks, and I can drag where things start and stop. So in this case, I'm going to, I can all on the fly. I can drop it in and out, and it will adapt automatically as we play. Now, once we're happy with the mix, we'll save it for now. You can actually go and you can preview this. So this is what the users would get, right? This is the same sort of experience. I've got a nice big font, so you should be able to read it as it comes through. And so you get this sort of experience going on. Now, we won't do the whole lot. We'll come back soon. But so we got to this stage about 18 months ago with the Google Chrome team, and we showed this to them. They said, right, guys, stop. The answer is yes, what do you want? And I said, what do you mean? And they said, it's the first practical example they've seen of soundtracking the web. They said, you're basically streaming multiple layers of audio, synchronized to someone's reading speed, to text, all done through the browser. They said, that's really hard to do. So how can we help? And we said, well, there's a couple of bugs in Chrome we need you to fix, and here's the fix. And so they did it for us. And then they said, look, we're actually going to relaunch Chrome in a couple of months. Would you like to be a part of that? So even today, this is the Chrome marketing page for Chrome, and BookTrack's listed as one of 6 innovative uses of web technologies right on the front page, which is pretty cool, eh? Right, but we have to publish this because that's where the rubber meets the road. So we're going to go publish, and you've got to go to the genre. Well, it's an adventure story. It's a short story. Language, it's English. I wrote it. It's only reasonable English. PG-13. And then finally, every book needs a cover. So if you have a cover, you can upload your own. But in this case, we've got a gallery of lots and lots of books. So let's look for, I don't know, building, see what we get. Okay, this looks interesting. Let's go for this ominous-looking building. And I'm going to give it a title. What do we call it? Amplify, of course. I'm not a book cover designer, but you need a big title, so I'll make that really, really big. And then what you do is you can position it. Let's put that right in the middle. Every cover needs an author's name, so I'll put my name on that. You can change the font size, colours, etc. That'll do for now. So what we've done now, in the space of a few minutes, we've added our text, we've added our sound, and we're ready to publish, okay? So I'm actually going to do this now. There are advanced options, like you can actually do this unlisted. You could write a love letter to your wife, add a soundtrack and send it, and she'd be the only one that would see it, and wouldn't that be nice? And I'm not going to notify and I'm going to hit publish, right? So now that is now available anywhere in the world. You could ring someone in USA, UK, and say, go to booktrack.com, put an Amplify, and that would now pop up there. And to show you that, I'm going to share this on Twitter. So let's just bring up this here. Let me actually I'm going to copy what is the handle here? Amplify Fest, so you guys can check it out. And I'm going to go, there we go, enjoyed, and so you guys should be able to find it. So can somebody get out their phone and look for that tweet, and then click on the link, and then get it playing on your phone, and then give me a hand once you've got it up there and running, so you can kind of see how quick that is. Now, the interesting thing about that is when most people publish, say, hey, check out my new app that I've just launched, you click on it, a link or something, then it says download the app, and you know what most people do? Nothing. They don't. They go, I'm too busy, and they don't. The great thing about what we've done is because it all works in the browser, if you can go, somebody finds that link on Twitter, if they click on it, and then what it will do, it will end up then playing in the mobile browser. So you go straight through to a BookTrack experience, and then what do people do? They go find something else to read, and then we've got them hooked. So that's BookTrack in a nutshell. There's a couple of other things that are interesting. One is if we go back here and I pick on, say, actually if I just search in here just to explain this, so Amplify. There's our book we created. I can click on read. There it is, and it's available. Let's have a read since we never read it yet. Let's have a read. So yeah, so you get the idea. Pretty cool, though. So thank you. So a couple other really, really cool things. So I'm just going to go to the homepage here and look at some of the, I'm just going to pick a book. Let me find, here's one. So I'm going to just find out more about this. Now we've got this little option here, a link. So you can actually embed a BookTrack in your own site, just like a YouTube clip. So here's one of our authors, but you could do this for a BookTrack. And so she's created a BookTrack, and now look at this here. This is actually playing from her website, just like a YouTube video does. So you can get this kind of immersive experience, discover her book. You can click on a word, you can turn the page. And if you really like it, you go, what is this BookTrack thing? They click on this link, and then it takes them straight to the store. We're finding these pop up in like social streams and all sorts of different places around the world. It's driving people back. And the final thing we're just starting to look at now is once you've created a BookTrack for a book, it's very easy for us to do this, and that's add it to an audiobook. Has anyone listened to audiobooks? So if you haven't, this is what they sound like. There's no soundtrack.
Screaming against the door and dragged with my nails at the lock. They implored the colonel to let me out. But the remorseless clanking of the levers drowned my cries.
And the other great thing is when you create a soundtrack, you can not only add it to an audiobook, you can add it to an audiobook or an ebook of any language because it's language independent. So there's all these sort of interesting things around what we're doing. The final bit of demo I want to show you before I jump back in to finish off the presentation is this. So when we launched this platform, a whole bunch of schools started using it, right? And this was this platform over here. That was a problem for us because why? Well, there's a whole lot of R-rated content on here, and it had to be kid-safe. So what we did, we decided to create something called BookTrack Classroom, which is identical to the main platform, except all the content's filtered, so it's safe. And the teacher goes and creates an account, and then they create their classes. So, for example, here's my grade 6 class. I set the rating, and then I create logins for my students. So, I can go Paul Smith in here, and then that'll put Paul Smith. There's a login and password. They give it out. So when the students go to BookTrack Classroom and log in, they get a bookshelf, which is, here's my grade 6 class, for example. They get all these books that are curated for them. But more importantly, when the class publish, they can all read each other's stories and they're not publicly done. So the way this is getting used in the classroom is really interesting. So teachers are going into the classroom saying, we're studying Huckleberry Finn, so you do chapter 1, you do chapter 2, you do chapter 3, and add a soundtrack and publish it. Or we're gonna write a short story today, and you could imagine the kids going, oh my God, And so what they're doing now is saying, write a short story and add a soundtrack. And you know what's happening? They love it, because when you're a teenager or preteen, what drives your life is music. And so what they end up doing, they all start trying to out-cool each other, and they spend hours on it. And teachers said they've never been able to get engagement around reading and writing, because it's a very tough thing to get kids into. And I've been in classrooms of kids, like complete classroom, problem kids, headphones on, absolutely silent, just going for hours at this here. So we're really excited by that. So let me just jump back into the brief. Done that. Okay, so where are we at? So we are, at 15 months, we've hit 2 million readers. We've got 10,000 book tracks created in 30 different languages, which is amazing. We get heavily covered by Google and Apple, and they promote us really well. They love the innovation. Top authors like Hugh Howey. Anyone heard of Hugh Howey? He's one of the top sci-fi writers in the world. He wrote this great article on us. He said, seriously, I haven't been this jazzed about a new way to read and write in forever. But all sorts of crazy stuff goes on. Like this is Chuck D from Public Enemy. He just tweeted one day, goes, MC should do guerrilla soundtracks, book tracks, things they do, which is pretty cool. But one of the things we're most excited about is this education play. It's a new way to learn. And if you look at this here, we've actually had 2 studies done on BookTrack, one done by New York University, one done by Auckland University, hundreds and hundreds of people involved in it. And what they proved categorically is if you read with a soundtrack, you will remember 17% more on average. Right? So that's like going from a D to a C or a B to an A. And these were people that they didn't know anything about BookTrack when they started, and they just said, read like this and then answer these questions. Some people got the soundtrack, some didn't. And the people that read with the soundtrack scored 17% more. But more importantly for us, the engagement levels went through the roof. People enjoyed it more, they liked it, they got more heavily involved. Our BookTrack Classroom product, it's free to use for education, so tell your teachers about it. It's used in 7,000 classrooms around the world at the moment and growing. Here's some of the quotes from some of the users that came out of one of the studies. It makes me feel calm, it smooths the word on the page. It helps me read because it makes reading like watching a real movie. I love that one. This here was what this was left on the App Store a year or so ago from a mother of an autistic teenager, who groans when he's told to read. Tonight he read Rikki Tikki Tavi, didn't put it down until he was finished. He only has to read 30 minutes, but he almost read an hour to finish the book. So there's all these sort of things now that are getting very interesting around the technology. Here's some examples of promotion from the Google education team who really help us out a lot as well. So what? So what does this all mean? Well, at the end of the day, this is what we believe as a team. We're transforming reading the same way sound transforms silent film, which is, that's a big statement, but we really believe that. We go out there every day and take on the world from the other side of the world, and we're really proud of that. I guess the so what about this is we've created a new category of entertainment content. If you look at this chart, this is like the entertainment world. There's kind of some that like reading, probably not as big as that, but we'll be hopeful. And then there's everyone else. Well, we're just cutting off this tiny slither of a new category. And a new category, creating new categories is very rare. And that's what we're doing. And think of some of the uses for that. So what about this here? In the publishing world, we could re-release the Harry Potter series with a soundtrack. Imagine now for the first time in publishing history, a publisher could sell you the book again with a soundtrack. People don't buy books twice, right? But you can with this. But imagine getting all those kids interested in reading. Perhaps they might actually read the story rather than not. So there's all sorts of opportunities there. And this is the other one that we really like is this, what about this? We take a no-name author that might sell 1,000 copies. You get Taylor Swift to collaborate on this teenage angst novel, and she puts a few songs in there and tweets out to her followers. That 1,000 sales would go to about 5 million sales. And you can't do that in publishing at the moment, but you can with our technology, and these are the sort of things we're working on. So the final thing, because I'm pretty much out of time, to leave you on is this, and that is we got approached by someone called Sir Andrew Motion about a year or two ago, and he is the Poet Laureate of the UK. So if you don't know what that means, it's like the Queen goes, you are now the Poet Laureate, you will go and spread poetry to the realm. And that's what he does. So he approached us, and he's an older guy, and if there's anyone that's going to probably not really gel with BookTrack, it's probably him, And he reached out to us and said he'd heard about it, he'd tried it, and he loved it. And he wrote this great article because, I don't know, how many of you are ebook readers in the audience? Quick show of hands. There's still a lot that aren't, which surprises me. And a lot of people go, oh, but I love the feel and the smell, and they've got this romantic notion around the book, which is fine, which is cool. It's better to be reading than not. But the point he makes in this article is a lot of people lament the loss of that tactile feel and that smell, but he said it's not adding anything to the story. In one book to the other, smells and feels the same. So he said BookTrack, in his opinion anyway, is the first example of something that actually brings new emotional connection with the book. So if you're interested, go to The Guardian, have a read, search for BookTrack, you'll find it. So I just want to finish with a very, very short video, and this is Sir Andrew Motion talking about BookTrack.
If I were an English teacher with a class full of slightly refusenic people reading Jane Eyre, people from a background in which books were problematic for one reason or another, and I knew they'd got an exam in 2 years' time, and they'd better damn well remember this book. We hope they would enjoy it as well as merely remember it, but they had to remember it. I would most definitely buy the BookTrack version of Jane Eyre, if such a thing existed. I would love to use BookTrack for everything. I want to publish everything that I publish in the future. I want there to be an audio version of it, I want there to be a video version of it, I want there to be a BookTrack version of it. That is the future of publishing.
And that's it. Thank you very much. Cool.